The Adirondack Mountains are known for their breathtaking beauty, millions of acres of rugged wilderness where hikers chase peace and families escape the noise of everyday life. But behind the postcard views and tranquil lakes, the forest has a darker reputation. People go missing here, and sometimes they're never found. In the fall of 2018, Laura Kettering and her son Daniel drove into these woods for a simple weekend getaway. They never came home. For 2 years, the forest held its silence. Search parties combed the trails, helicopters scanned the skies, and yet nothing. No tent, no backpacks, no trace. Then, on a gray October morning, a hunter's dog began to dig and unearthed a secret so chilling it would change the Adirondacks forever. Her name was Laura Kettering, 36 years old, a devoted mother, a teacher, and a woman whose life revolved around her young son, Daniel. He was 7, a boy with boundless curiosity and a laugh that seemed to echo louder than anything else in their home. Together, they were inseparable. Laura was raising him on her own after a difficult separation, and those who knew her said that Daniel wasn't just her son, he was her whole world. That autumn weekend was supposed to be an escape, a short trip into the mountains, a chance to trade the noise of everyday life for the calm of forest trails and campfires. The Ketterings packed lightly. A tent, sleeping bags, snacks Daniel had picked himself at the store, a well-worn backpack Laura had used since college. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Neighbors recalled seeing Laura's car pull out of the driveway, Daniel in the back seat, his face pressed to the window in excitement. He had told his best friend at school that week that he was going camping with his mom. "We're going to see deer," he bragged. His backpack bulged with comic books and a flashlight he insisted on carrying. By midday, they were spotted at a small gas station at the edge of town. Laura filled the tank, bought bottled water, and let Daniel pick a candy bar. The cashier later told police she seemed calm, happy even. She asked for directions to a trailhead she'd been recommended. Nothing about the exchange seemed unusual. It was an ordinary stop on an ordinary trip. That evening, though, ordinary gave way to silence. The Adirondacks are vast, 6 million acres of wilderness where cell service falters and roads disappear into dirt paths. Trails twist endlessly, each turn leading deeper into the unknown. It is a place where beauty hides danger, where one wrong step can leave even experienced hikers disoriented. When Laura and Daniel didn't return by Sunday evening, family members grew worried. She had planned to be back by late afternoon. Calls to her phone went unanswered. By nightfall, her sister reported her missing. The search began immediately. Rangers and deputies fanned out from the trailhead, where Laura's car was found parked neatly. The vehicle held nothing suspicious, a few personal items, a folded map, Daniel's half-empty juice box in the cup holder. The trunk was empty, suggesting they had indeed gone into the woods intending to camp. Through the night, searchers swept the trails with flashlights. They called Laura's name Daniel's name. Dogs were brought in, sniffing the ground, pulling handlers deeper into the forest. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights piercing the treetops. But by dawn, there was nothing. No tent, no backpacks, no footprints leading away from the trails. It was as if mother and son had been erased. Witness accounts trickled in. A hiker claimed to have seen a woman and boy matching their description near a lake that Saturday afternoon. Another thought they heard laughter on a trail around dusk, though they couldn't be sure. These glimpses offered fragments, but no certainty. Days passed. The search widened. Marshes were combed, rivers waded through, ravines peered into. Teams moved slowly, carefully, marking grids on maps, checking them off one by one. They found deer tracks, bear scat, broken branches, signs of the wilderness alive and indifferent. But they found nothing of Laura and Daniel. The community rallied. Volunteers from surrounding towns arrived by the dozens. Some brought food for the search teams. Others joined the long lines of people combing through the brush shoulder to shoulder. Churches held vigils. Schoolchildren made posters. Daniel's classmates left his desk empty, a photograph of him taped to the chair. Yet hope began to dim. By the end of the second week, investigators faced a haunting possibility that this was not simply a case of a family lost in the woods. Something else had happened. Something darker. The terrain was difficult, yes, but it was unlikely that both mother and son would vanish without leaving a trace. Rangers often said the forest keeps its secrets, but in most cases, it also leaves clues: a shoe, a torn piece of fabric, a water bottle. Here, there was nothing. Speculation grew. Had they fallen victim to the rugged landscape, swept into a river, hidden in the depths of a ravine? Or was this foul play? Rumors spread quickly. Some pointed to a string of thefts in nearby parks, suggesting dangerous strangers lurked in the woods. Others whispered that Laura had enemies, though those who knew her found that unlikely. Online forums lit up with theories, ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Law enforcement faced mounting pressure. Press conferences were tense, reporters demanding answers that investigators could not provide. "We are following every lead," the sheriff insisted, but behind the scenes, frustration grew. The forest was vast, resources were limited, and after weeks with no results, the case began to stall. For Laura's family, the waiting was unbearable. Each day brought new anguish. Each night ended with no answers. Daniel's father, estranged but still involved, pleaded publicly for information. "My son is out there. Somebody knows something. Please, help us bring him home." But the woods remained silent. The search stretched into months. Helicopters stopped flying overhead. Volunteers went back to their lives. The posters faded in the rain, and the Ketterings became another unsolved case, a name added to the long list of those who had disappeared into the Adirondacks without explanation. 2 years passed before the silence broke. In the weeks after Laura and Daniel Kettering vanished, the Adirondacks seemed to hold its breath. The search that began with urgency slowly transformed into a grinding, exhausting ritual. Deputies and volunteers combed the same trails again and again, their boots sinking into mud, their voices hoarse from calling names that never received an answer. By the third week, search grids stretched outward for miles. Rivers were dragged, divers plunged into frigid waters, and cadaver dogs sniffed tirelessly. Helicopters swept the mountainsides until fuel costs forced them to land. Still, no sign of the mother and son emerged. It was as though they had walked into the forest and dissolved into its shadows. Hope gave way to doubt. For investigators, the absence of evidence was the loudest evidence of all. No torn clothing, no misplaced belongings, not even a single shoe, the kind of detail search teams often find when hikers become lost. Everything Laura and Daniel had carried seemed to vanish with them. That void fueled theories, and theories fueled suspicion. The first theory was the most natural: an accident. The Adirondacks are unforgiving. Its trails, though beautiful, are lined with hidden dangers, sudden drop-offs, loose shale, rivers that swell without warning. Many believed Laura and Daniel had strayed off the marked trail, stumbled into rough terrain, and met a tragic end. Yet without evidence, this theory remained guesswork. Others whispered of animals. The woods are home to black bears, coyotes, and even the occasional mountain lion. But experts pushed back. Attacks are rare. Predators leave signs, torn clothing, tracks, blood. None of those were found. Soon, attention turned to darker possibilities. Foul play. Rumors surfaced about petty thefts and muggings in campgrounds nearby. Rangers recalled reports of unfamiliar vehicles parked at odd hours near trailheads. Locals remembered strangers asking questions about campsites and families. Was Laura targeted? Did someone follow her and Daniel into the woods that day? In online forums, debates raged. One commenter wrote, "Never underestimate the intellectual laziness of law enforcement." Another posted, "They always rush to call it an accident because they don't want to admit something worse is out there." Theories range from kidnapping to trafficking to a botched robbery. Each one carried its own weight of fear. As days bled into months, frustration mounted. Press conferences became shorter, less optimistic. Detectives repeated the same lines: "We are pursuing all leads. We cannot speculate." The community grew restless. Candlelight vigils turned into protests outside the sheriff's office. Families demanded to know why no progress had been made. The Kettering case became a symbol, a reminder of law enforcement's limits, a wound that would not heal. For Laura's family, grief became a way of life. Holidays passed with empty chairs. Daniel's classmates advanced to new grades, his desk forever unfilled. Laura's home remained frozen in time, her shoes by the door, Daniel's toys scattered across the living room. Each morning began with a new wave of helplessness. 2 years is a long time to live with silence. It is long enough for newspapers to stop running stories, for reporters to move on to fresher headlines. Long enough for neighbors to stop whispering, for posters to fade on telephone poles, for sympathy cards to disappear into drawers. The case that once gripped the community slipped quietly into the category everyone feared, unsolved. But the Adirondacks had not finished speaking. It happened on a cold morning in late October. A local hunter took his dog into the woods near a remote ridge, miles from the original search area. The man had walked those paths for years, his dog trotting faithfully at his side. That morning felt no different. The leaves had already fallen, leaving the trees bare and the air sharp with the smell of earth and frost. Then the dog stopped. It sniffed the ground, tail stiff, ears alert. The hunter thought it had scented a deer, maybe a rabbit burrow. But instead of tracking forward, the animal began to dig, furiously, paws scattering dirt and leaves. The man stepped closer, calling to it, and then froze. Half buried in the soil was fabric. Torn, faded, but unmistakably man-made. The hunter's chest tightened as he pulled the dog back and brushed the dirt away. What he uncovered stopped him cold. Bones. Small bones. And beside them, objects he recognized instantly as human belongings, a shoe, a fragment of a backpack, rusted metal from what appeared to be a zipper. The hunter stumbled back, his breath ragged. His dog whined, pawing at the earth. Hands shaking, he dialed the sheriff's office. "I think I've found them," he whispered into the phone. Within hours, the site was cordoned off. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind. Deputies stood guard as forensic teams arrived in vans, unpacking equipment under floodlights that turned the woods into a theater of horror. Investigators knelt in the dirt, carefully brushing soil from what was now unmistakably human remains. Word spread quickly. News crews arrived, cameras trained on the flashing lights that pierced the forest gloom. Neighbors gathered at the roadblocks, whispering prayers, some weeping openly. The Kettering case was no longer a mystery of vanishing. It was now a case of discovery. For Laura's family, the call was both deliverance and devastation. 2 years of uncertainty had ended, but not in the way they had prayed. The discovery confirmed what they had tried so hard not to believe. Mother and son were gone. The Adirondacks had finally given up its secret, but the answers it offered only deepened the questions. The discovery in the woods electrified the region. Forensic vans crowded the narrow dirt road, their headlights piercing the mist. Detectives whispered urgently. Radios crackled, and the flashing red and blue glow of police cruisers painted the trees in stuttering light. The bones unearthed by the hunter's dog were carefully lifted from the ground, each fragment placed gently into evidence bags. Soil samples were collected, the disturbed earth photographed from every angle. Personal belongings lay scattered nearby. A child's shoe, its fabric stiff and faded, scraps of a woman's jacket, the rusted zipper of what looked like Daniel's backpack. When investigators announced the findings, the community felt the weight of 2 years collapse into a single moment. The Kettering disappearance was no longer a question of if. It was a question of how and why. Autopsies were ordered. Forensic anthropologists examined the bones, looking for signs of trauma, for bullet wounds, knife marks, fractures. But decomposition and the harsh Adirondack elements had left their own scars, making conclusions difficult. Still, experts confirmed the remains belonged to Laura and her son. DNA testing matched them to relatives. The final sliver of hope that maybe they had simply vanished into a new life, hiding somewhere else, was gone. But answers were not what this discovery brought. It only birthed more questions. Why had their bodies been buried so far from the trailhead? Why had no search party uncovered them before? Had someone moved them? Or had the area been overlooked in the early frenzy of the investigation? Theories, once buried with time, returned in force. Some pointed again to the possibility of an accident. Had Laura and Daniel strayed from their campsite, become disoriented, and succumbed to exposure? Could scavenging animals have scattered their belongings before Earth covered their remains? To some, this explanation fits, tragic but simple. Others rejected it outright. The burials seemed deliberate. The placement of belongings felt staged. And what about their car, left neatly at the trailhead, untouched? People questioned whether Laura and Daniel had ever reached the site willingly or whether someone had led them into the woods. In local diners and online forums, conversations grew heated. One chilling theory suggested their car had been ransacked, and they had crossed paths with whoever had been responsible. Perhaps they interrupted a theft. Perhaps they were silenced because they saw too much. Another theory painted a darker picture: abduction. Could someone have lured them into the forest under false pretenses? Was there a predator stalking families in the Adirondacks, watching campgrounds, waiting for opportunities? Parents shuddered at the thought, holding their children closer when hiking. Theories about law enforcement negligence flourished as well. Residents accused authorities of giving up too soon, of narrowing the search grid prematurely, of ignoring local tips. If I called the police every time I found a pan full of buckshot out in the woods, they'd get mighty tired of me, one local said bitterly, pointing to what many viewed as arrogance and laziness in the original investigation. Online voices amplified the frustration. Never underestimate the intellectual laziness of law enforcement, one commenter posted. I think cops rush to conclusions just to get it over with. The criticism struck a nerve. Officials defended their work, pointing to the sheer scale of the Adirondacks and the difficulty of the terrain. But to families living with loss, explanations fell hollow. The discovery of Laura and Daniel's remains ignited painful emotions. Friends who had once clung to hope now mourned openly. I am so sorry for the Kettering family's loss. It must have been horrifying for that mother and son. I pray their memories will always be a blessing, one woman wrote in a tribute. The words rippled across social media, carried by strangers who felt the weight of the tragedy even from afar. The case also reignited broader fears. The Adirondacks had long been a symbol of peace and natural beauty. Families camped by its lakes. Couples hiked its trails. Children played in its fields. But now, every tree, every trailhead seemed to whisper of hidden dangers. Parents grew cautious. Hikers began to travel in groups, wary of venturing alone. The disappearance of the Ketterings had left a scar on the land itself. For Laura's family, grief was endless. Her sister wept as she told reporters, "She was the strongest person I knew. She loved those woods, and she loved her son more than anything. To know they were out there for 2 years, waiting for us to find them, it's unbearable." Daniel's classmates, now older, spoke of him in past tense. He was funny. He loved dinosaurs. He wanted to be a firefighter. His empty desk at school had long since been filled by another student, but his memory lingered in whispered stories and the ache of what might have been. The tragedy of the Ketterings became not just a personal loss, but a cultural warning. Commenters online shared their own brushes with danger in national parks and forests. "My cousin Rock climbed at Yosemite fearlessly in the 80s, one man wrote. But he got mugged at gunpoint 3 times while hiking in the national park there. Things are worse today than then." Another added, "Nature is beautiful, but people are unpredictable. That's what you have to fear most." And so the case became something larger, a reflection of trust eroded, of safety shattered. The Adirondacks remained beautiful, but beauty no longer meant safety. Investigators promised to continue their work. Forensic teams scoured the site for additional evidence. Detectives chased down old leads with renewed vigor. But years had passed, memories had faded, and trails had grown cold. The discovery of the remains was an ending, but not the closure anyone wanted. Laura and Daniel's story now stands as a haunting reminder of what can vanish in the silence of the woods, and of how fragile human trust in law and safety can be. And now, I turn to you. What do you think happened to the Ketterings? Was it an accident, a brutal crime, Or something stranger still? Why were they left hidden for 2 years, their story buried with them? Your thoughts matter. Share your theories in the comments below. Keep their story alive. Because when the missing are remembered, they are not truly gone. If this story gripped you, subscribe to Cold Crime Chronicles. Every week, we bring you haunting mysteries, unsolved disappearances, and chilling cold cases that deserve to be remembered. Subscribing ensures you never miss the next case that might finally reveal the truth. Don't let the Kettering's story fade into silence. Share this video, leave your theory, and join the discussion. Together we can keep their memory alive, because every voice. This was the story of Laura and Daniel Kettering, the mother and son who vanished in the Adirondacks. 2 years later, it was a hunter's dog that unearthed their secret. The woods told part of the story. You decide the rest.